that Chris Harris won't be drafting this year. That and more this week on the couch. Chris Harris, welcome back to the couch. Who will you not be drafting this year?
I mean, at his, I don't ever think of this stuff in terms of absolutes, but given what the ADP is, it's not that I don't like Kyler Murray, but I'm just not going to draft a rookie quarterback to be whatever, it's the 7th quarterback in fantasy, I think is crazy. So I'll be sticking away from him. I'll give you a bonus, Tevin Coleman. I think there's way too much of a gap between Tevin Coleman and Matt Breida, so I won't have Coleman either.
That's fair, and I think you hit on two important things right away. I actually, as much as I like to tell tall tales, fairy tales, stories, and excited as I am about the Cardinals, I'm not targeting Kyler Murray now. And I have moved Lamar Jackson ahead of him, and Lamar Jackson's that aspirational quarterback. And here's my thinking, Chris. And Chris Harris at Harris Football, you know him. You love him. An OG in our fantasy world. I don't like that the Cardinals start with the Ravens in week 2 and the Lions in week 1, because these are teams that I think are going to take the air out of the football and maybe give Kyler Murray like 5 or 6 possessions in those first 2 games. Then his schedule gets easier and things should get better for him as the season goes on, but he's more of a second quarterback than a first quarterback. And as you pointed out with his ADP, now you have to draft him as a first quarterback. The running backs for the 49ers take is excellent, because I think a great way to think about this stuff right now is when 2 players on the same team have roughly the same, at least we know they have the same surroundings, and sometimes closer value than ADP indicates, you always take the second one, right? Like DJ Moore and Curtis Samuel, or Kenny Golladay and Marvin Jones. I think these are players that are close enough that the ADP gaps aren't justified, but the ADP gap is closing for those Carolina receivers. Before we get to the hot marquee names, anything you want to say on the players I just brought up?
The difference for me between all of those situations of split jobs or not split jobs is that Tevin Coleman's going in the 5th round and Matt Breida is like going undrafted or like in the 13th round or something. That it's just so much farther apart. I'll make the argument for talent Golladay over Marvin Jones. I'll make the argument for talent DJ Moore over Curtis Samuel, even though I like those second players fine.
Right.
But I will own some of those first players depending on how drafts wind up falling. But I'm just never going to own Tevin Coleman at that price, at that spread away from Matt Breida.
Yeah, I'm not sure, and I'm not putting words in your mouth. I'll say that I'm not sure that Matt Breida is not better than Tevin Coleman.
Sure, I actually have him rated ahead of him in a standard league, not PPR, but in standard league I have him right side by side. I have Breida higher. I mean, who's a better football player? I don't have a question. It's not Tevin Coleman. I don't think Tevin Coleman's a very good football player. He's a good athlete, but not a very good football player.
Right, and we'll see. We'll see if Kyle Shanahan, who's had eyes for him since they were back in Atlanta. But I agree. I think Breida's the 49ers running back target. Breida's part of a really fertile end of the draft running back group, or second half of the draft running back group. A lot of rookies. I was just, Chris, earlier today, I got almost an anxiety attack thinking about Justice Hill and Darwin Thompson and these kinds of running backs that week or 2 or 3 into the season, you might feel like, why did I not take them? And it might be different running backs for different people that are out there. But the running backs, like once you fill up your lineup, once you get your core performers, then you start, well, I think what you should do is swing from your toes, swing for the fences, not necessarily swing for singles. Those are home run swings for me. Do you agree with the idea of home run swings versus single swings in the second half of your draft? And who is a couple of guys you're targeting there?
So what I'll say about that is I wouldn't say I endorse either singles or home runs without context. I would say I'm probably, if I go Todd Gurley, Antonio Brown, Andrew Luck in the first halves of drafts, I'm probably going to go, some singles sound pretty good to me right now. Because I've let's smooth it out a little bit. Actually, on my show today, I just did 5 safe players, sort of mid late round players who, if you go risky early, you can sort of fill in with. But I totally get the idea that if you feel like you kind of played it straight down the middle in those first few rounds, 100%. Understand, depends on your league, depends on scarcity in your league. Context always matters. You're a nuanced guy for sure. I know I've talked to you enough to know that you respect the nuance of the person's individual league, but presuming that there are replacement options for if Justice Hill happens not to work out or play much to begin, and you can find someone who can help you down the road. If Gus Edwards is not getting drafted and Gus Edwards wind up being the guy, then
Right.
As long as he's not taken too, it's a super deep bench league, then you're probably okay.
Yeah, you bring up a good point. Of course, always there's a caveat of, well, tell me what you did earlier in your draft, and then I'll give you more specific advice to what you should be doing later in your draft. So you brought up a couple of names. So Chris, you're part of a cavalcade of stars through the couch. I hope we clean up between guests, but we've got coming up. And for those of you, by the way, that tuned in when I was going to have Evan Silva on this morning, and we had some technical difficulties, we've rescheduled that to later in the week. Paul Charchian is going to be on this week too. So I'm trying to hit on the players. So one of the things that's interesting this year, Chris, because you've been doing this as longer than I have, I know, is that this year it feels like there are more players that there is no way. What's the line from the Rush song? Pete Davidson and I were talking about it. Like, that is
not a common sentence in the world these days. What's that line from the Rush song?
Right,
is it like today's Tom Sawyer?
Right, exactly. I don't know. It's like even if you do not choose, you still have made a choice or something like that.
Oh yeah, sure.
So like players like Todd Gurley, Melvin Gordon, and so on. There's a lot of them. If you just abstain from taking a stand, that's a stand, right? There's no like, I'm just lukewarm, I'm not sure, we'll see if they fall to me, because that means you're just not going to take them. And that's a stand. So Todd Gurley, let's start with Todd Gurley.
Sure.
Todd Gurley is a second round pick. How do you feel about that proposition?
I would maybe consider him at the end of the first. I'm pretty risk embracing in general, because I think there are solutions for when we hear stories all the time. You came on my show and started talking about a team last week when you were on, about a team that messed up your first 3 picks last year and still won a championship. Like, I just know the draft is important, but it's not the most important, or it's not the only important thing in player acquisition. I'm willing to take the chance. I recognize that the days of 25 to 30 touches are gone. I don't agree with the take that says it's 12. I think it's going to be 18, and he's probably not going to be out there for tons of receptions anymore. And so there's reason to be concerned. There's reason not to consider him the number 1 overall pick. Like, I think if he'd ended the year in great form last year and gone on to lead the team to a Super Bowl championship, I think pretty clearly he's the number 1 player in fantasy. So I'm certainly discounting him by not putting him way up high in the first round. But I that's one where if I'm going to make a stand, I'm making a stand. I actually did an auction last night where I took him and I got him cheap. I got him, probably $10, $15 less than the other, what I consider to be RB1s.
So do you then feel like you have to take Darrell Henderson, or feel like you should take Malcolm Brown later?
So I did take Henderson in that auction last night and spent a little more than I wanted to, but it's a keeper league, so I justified it. It was like a trip to Whole Foods where I was like, that trail mix does taste good, and it's cost like $8 a bag, but sure.
But it's so good, yeah.
What the heck? And I wish I knew whether. I know the trail mix is good. I'm actually not that sure whether Darrell Henderson is good. He looks like he's all right. And it does sort of lock you in. I mean, that league is a deeper league, the one that I was in, so the temptation was to get Malcolm Brown as well. If I'm in a standard 12-team league, it feels like Brown probably goes undrafted otherwise, and I probably am okay letting him go by and not having whatever that is, like 15% of my roster be Rams running backs. But I also don't hate it if someone did try to corner the market.
Yeah, it's not excessive to have all 3 of them because of how good the situation is. Right. And if Todd Gurley goes out week 1 and has 18 touches and looks like himself, then Malcolm Brown might be dropped in a lot of leagues. If Todd Gurley only gets 12 touches, or gets 12 touches and then unceremoniously leaves the game because they're up.
My arm.
Look, Panthers week 1 should be a fun and interesting week 1 matchup for Todd Gurley. That front 7 looks beastly. So we'll see. I like taking Malcolm Brown at the end of the draft, whether you've taken Gurley or Henderson or not, because you get that week 1 reveal of, hey, if Gurley doesn't look right, or the way they handle him gives us bad vibes, then Malcolm Brown's going to be a top waiver wire pickup in week 2, so you can beat people to the punch. Henderson, I was even taking as high as the 6th or 7th round earlier in the offseason. We're cooling a little bit, although when you saw him dust Jalen Smith, that still gives you an idea of what he brings to the table. But 8th round now seems better than 6th round, and then you start weighing him against the luxury pick of taking now like Justice Hill and Darwin Thompson and these other rookie racks are closing on him. I think, let me go off on that tangent, Chris.
Sure.
because I think you should have. You brought up auction, and I think an auction is a good way to think about it, where your capital you should have a little set aside to splurge. Talked about splurging. It's funny. I was thinking we just bought a mattress, and that may even be more apt for the keeper league because you're stuck with your mattress. You're stuck with it for a while. Yeah. So maybe spend a little bit more to get a little bit better mattress. Anyway, it could lead me to side conversations roads that may reveal too much about my mind. But
your butt.
Yeah. Well, what's important when you're thinking about a mattress, and what's important for me might not be important for someone else. Look, what rookie running backs, or are there rookie running backs that you're earmarking some money and saying, I want to get them in my draft?
So if I take Gurley, probably I'm thinking about Darrell Henderson.
Yeah.
No, I think that's the situation where I'm gonna put them in the draft board, and I'm not gonna feel like I'm reaching for them. And knowing what ADP is about those respective rookies, I don't feel like I'm super likely to get any of them over any other player. Like they have fallen to me. I mean, at this point, like you, I've done so many mock drafts. Just literally got out of a CBS one, and don't think I got any rookie running. I think I took Henderson without taking Gurley in that draft because he fell far enough. But I didn't get Thompson. I didn't get Hill. But I got Ingram, and I was thinking very much about Hill, and I think he went a few picks before me. But it didn't feel like I needed to. So I guess the answer is that between Montgomery, Sanders, that draft I just did, I did get Sanders, but again lasted really long. In no case did I feel like, I'm going to splurge here and really absolutely make sure I get that guy. This doesn't feel like that rookie class to me. Honestly, there's no position where that feels like that's this rookie class.
I understand. Yeah, it's fair. So the trio for me, Chris, is Hill and Thompson and Harris, only because they're in great situations. I mean, Baltimore and Kansas City and New England are running back point factories, and we don't know how good they're going to be yet. So that it's that allure of the unknown upside, the allure of the reveal. When I was a kid, I loved getting baseball cards because it was just like, what's in this going to be in this pack, and what's going to be in this pack, and they're kind of like that pack that you don't know exactly what's in there yet. Okay, let's talk more about the marquee names because I'm marching everyone through, and I really want to get everyone's take so folks can just compare and contrast the approach, the bottom line take, etc. Because these are the big take a stand questions. Gurley being one. We have the holdout running backs. You can take them both in one take, or you can tease it out however you want. Yeah. Ezekiel Elliott and Melvin Gordon. As of this moment, of course, it could happen like while we're talking that it could change. Right. But as of this moment, they haven't showed up yet. How do you handle them if you're drafting tonight?
So, I still have Zeke 2 overall, and just the CBS draft that I just did, somebody took him 1 overall. And that's I can't remember who it was. I can't remember which expert it was, but. It's a defensible position. How could I argue it's not a defensible position to keep him real up high? But if someone said he's 4, I'm going to take McCaffrey, Kamara, and Barkley ahead of him, I couldn't debate that. And if someone just said, I don't want any part of this, I can get a really darn good player, a league-winning type player at a couple different positions. I think it so much comes down to your risk tolerance. The Gordon price is just different now. Like there's been Melvin Gordon doubters for as long as there's been Melvin Gordon. I think Melvin Gordon came out of the womb and like he had strangers running into the delivery room telling people that he was bad at what he did, screaming, terrible bad screaming crier. And yet they weren't really affecting his ADP. They weren't really, there's sort of voices in the wind who, 2 years ago, we're finding the excuse that he had a low yards per carry, and then it turned out last year he didn't have a low yards per carry, so then they found another reason to dislike him. That's just sort of the way it is. I think he's significantly better than anything else the Chargers have, but I don't think he's really as good as Zeke Elliott or Saquon Barkley or that 225-pound back who doesn't have to come off the field, who just has a special change of direction for his size. He's maybe half a step down from those guys. So it's easier for everybody, the believers and the doubters, to come down and say, all right, you know what, 3rd round. And in the 3rd round, it starts to feel a little bit like a risk that's okay, worth taking. Now you're kind of locking yourself into, I'm going to have 3 Charger running backs. Let's reach to get Eckler. Let's reach to get Justin Jackson. Zeke just feels like such a much harder case because someone has to take that plunge in the first round. I don't see any way he doesn't go in the first round. Someone at some point is going to take that risk, and they probably should. But I just don't know how it's going to work out.
Well, keeping Elliott number 2, I think, is a strong buy recommendation at this point because he's often there at 3 or 4, sometimes even later. And I can endorse that because he would be number 1 without really pausing to think about it too much if he was in camp right now. I mean, on my board.
For me, it's still Barkley, but he'd be a number 2. He'd be 1A. I mean, he'd be close enough. Yeah.
And then you can take Pollard later. And I mean, Pollard falls again into that rookie running back unknown allure. And the difference between Pollard and Thompson and Hill is that when Zeke shows up, well, I mean, Pollard could still be a what the heck flex if Kellen Moore is going to revolutionize this offense and turn him into that weapon. And Pollard looks good. Pollard has that momentum of just some of the momentum is the Cowboys talking him up to put pressure on Zeke, but some of it is he looks good. But if Zeke shows up, it slams the door shut on him having league winning upside. Where Hill and Thompson, between the guys ahead of them, look, Ingram and Damian Williams are not among the most likely running backs to not miss time this year. And for all we know, Thompson and Hill could be as impactful or more impactful than the veterans ahead of them once they start playing.
Really surprised. I'd be surprised if Justice Hill, if there's a healthy Ingram, I'd be surprised if
Justice Hill could at least be the Kamara to Ingram.
I'd be surprised.
He's
just he's a smaller guy, and he's just never done anything NFL related in his life. I mean,
but except keep Chris Carson off the field at Oklahoma State.
Fair, but that presupposes that I think Chris Carson is great, which I don't.
So, well, since you said that, are you getting a lot of Rashad Penny shares?
Not really. No, I have Carson significantly ahead of Penny, but I think Chris Carson is fine. I think Chris Carson is like a try-hard Jordan Howard type of player who can be completely serviceable. And, I don't know how volume is going to work out because I think a lot of that depends on what Penny is ready for. And I don't think we can ever know that until we actually see how they deploy them. I mean, it strikes me that if Rashad Penny can't get on the field this year, it's a pretty damning condemnation of him as a first-round pick. And he's a better athlete than Chris Carson. He's probably just not a better football player at this point. And Justice Hill is he's never pass blocked. He's never really run real routes. He's never, I guess, the fact that they're running kind of a Greg Roman glorified college offense in Baltimore is to some degree, he just came from college. Okay. Except for that's not really what Oklahoma State ran. It strikes me as unlikely that Justice Hill is even a Kamara level to Mark Ingram. I could squint and see it and I don't know. None of us know jack about Darwin Thompson. We know he tested real well. We don't really know. We don't know anything. What we're expressing, and probably rightly so, is some degree of skepticism that Damian Williams is great.
Right.
I will stipulate that he's probably pretty good. I did a YouTube show breaking down his film, and I think he has some pretty good stuff on film and can take advantage and stay ahead in that job. But all you need is one mistake. All you need is one crease. All you need is one, if it works, they have a game where Darwin Thompson just works. They're not going to have a super incentive to go, but darn it, Damian Williams is our guy.
Exactly.
Yeah.
We've already seen that. I mean, that's the thing.
Right.
So we know, I was saying this on a show earlier this week, we know the Kansas City situation is a good situation. And we know that when whether it was, first it was West and Ware, but then Ware pulled away from West. Then it was Ware and Hunt pulled away from Ware, and Ware was hurt too. And then it was Ware and Damian Williams pulled away from Ware was also hurt. And I mean, they're not committed to a player. Right. So that's why Darwin Thompson's exciting. And just to be clear, because sometimes things that seem non-controversial to me are controversial to others. Is putting Darwin Thompson ahead of Carlos Hyde controversial in your eyes?
It's not controversial. I don't have him that way at this point, and it might just be because I don't really trust what coaches say. I don't trust what Andy Reid says, and so I don't know what Darwin Thompson is at all. I have some level of a grappling hook on what Carlos Hyde is, and it's not that exciting, but it could work. It could work in that offense, though.
Yeah. It's functional, but that's it, and not.
I mean, who's a better player, Spencer Ware or Carlos Hyde?
Right. Well,
I think it's probably Carlos Hyde. I think it probably is. I think in the end, Ware was always kind of a big body who can't move, and Carlos Hyde is a big body who can move a little bit, or at least
a little bit more. Yeah,
maybe a little bit more. By the same token, if the real question is, would I be surprised if Carlos Hyde gets cut before the season? No, would not be surprised at all, because there's no question that he's not the future in Kansas City. He's an item that you keep around if you're worried the rest of the stuff you have isn't enough.
Exactly. And I forget who it was I was talking to. I think it was Davis Maddock, who said that he thought that Hyde was a signing that if they don't get a rookie they like, then they have Hyde. But they got a rookie, and they might, as you said, we take it at face value, maybe not. But it sounds like maybe they like Darwin Thompson. And certainly if you watch Darwin Thompson, there's some things to like there. Look, I'll put it this way. I feel much more confident Thompson will be on the roster week 1 than Hyde. And that's why I put Thompson ahead of Hyde. Sure. But I think I'm just glad that you're saying, hey, Hyde might get cut, because when Greg Rosenthal brought it up at the beginning of camp as a potential surprise cut, there were some saying that's just not going to happen. And then the first beat writer, I think it was Pete Sweeney, who does radio, and I think Arrowhead Pride, said, I'm leaving him off of my 53 like the first week of camp. People said that's just preposterous. It's not so preposterous now. Maybe it was never preposterous.
I mean, I don't think it was ever preposterous. I also think people who react to people's proposed cuts and like get all up in arms and say things are preposterous, I think those people are preposterous.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I'll say this. Keep your mind open, because no matter what you say, Chris, or what I say, or you take your favorite, most accurate fantasy expert, we're all going to be really wrong about like 20 or 30% of things. I mean, there's just no way around it. And there's going to be things that even you or I, with our open minds, would say that's impossible. That's going to happen. I mean, that's just the nature of the NFL. In some ways, I think it's what keeps us compelled year after year. Real quickly on Melvin Gordon. So what about Austin Eckler? What about Justin Jackson? Are you taking any positions on them as that, I guess, betting on the holdout instead of fading the holdout?
I haven't gotten any Eckler in drafts where I've not taken Gordon. So to me, that means I'm probably not as high as the person who does take Gordon in your draft. Does that make sense? Like, in the end, it'll come down to probably Eckler. Eckler should, to me, go to anybody who takes Gordon. That feels like a one-to-one relationship, whereas to me, Tony Pollard doesn't feel that way. I'm stuck up. I guess I get that in a preseason game that doesn't matter against players who won't be playing, Tony Pollard looked good. Okay. I'm definitely paying attention Saturday to that Cowboy game. Yeah. I want to see how there's not going to be any Zeke. I want to see if he's deployed as the starter. Probably still doesn't necessarily mean anything, because it can still be a message to Zeke, but I'd imagine in the first half he'll be facing real defenders. Let's see if he does it again. I'm 73 carries last year at University of Memphis.
Right.
And I think more than half of them as the Wildcat quarterback. Okay. I mean, we like the kid from Alabama, Josh Jacobs, and he was the third running back. So maybe that's all this was. Darrell Henderson was one of them. We like Darrell Henderson, but I'm skeptical still that Tony Pollard is a starting running back in the NFL. Is he probably better than Alfred Morris? I mean, probably, but then again, I think you might be. Yeah, you might be better than Alfred Morris. To me, Eckler isn't as good as Melvin Gordon. He is much more of a stereotypical third down back. And actually, so is Julius. What's his name?
Justin Jackson.
Justin Jackson. I call him Julius Jones. Going back in time, very different player. I think both those guys are actually fairly similar to one another. They're both kind of the modern interpretation of what a third down back is, and very, very useful players, but probably not lead backs. But there's just an easier road to go. Sure. Eckler feels like a proven commodity. He's pretty good. He's done what he's done, been efficient on a per touch basis. That efficiency would go down if he were the starter, but I can see it. I believe it. And so if you're a Gordon owner, that's to me means you draft Eckler.
Well, if you spend a third on Gordon and a seventh on Eckler, and you can get first round production out of it, whoever it comes from, it's probably an okay trade-off.
Sure. Do I think Austin Eckler, if there's no Melvin Gordon, do I think Austin Eckler's a first round value? I don't.
No.
I have to admit, I don't.
No, he's not. He's not. And the question is, at that point, when does Gordon come back, which could get messy? Right. We're still in a lot of uncertainty. And that's and as wild-eyed as I get, Chris, when I've stepped through these players, I find I don't like uncertainty. I mean, I don't like uncertainty early in my draft. You have to embrace uncertainty later in your draft, because that's why players are there later in your draft. because there's uncertainty. But another player that has, well, you might say there's not uncertainty, but it's certainly there is something going on with Antonio Brown. Is it something that is affecting your willingness to draft him?
I mean, I think I've gotten him in every draft. I really do. I think I've gotten him in just about every draft. I just took him in the 3rd round in this past draft. I have him rated higher than that, but now I know. Now I just wait. And if he falls to me in the 3rd, I go, ha, ha, ha. I mean, that's a PPR team where I wound up with DeAndre Hopkins and Antonio Brown as my 2 receivers. And, there's a way for that to go badly. But I just think this is so much. This is the millennial fantasy football player. He just wants drama, dude. He just wants attention. He wants Skip and Stephen A and somebody else screaming at each other about him across the table. That's what he wants. And I don't believe it really means anything. The argument that gets made that's a real football argument is, but he hasn't practiced with Derek Carr, but Derek Carr isn't a good fit for him. They really need to know each other better. I just think Antonio Brown, last time I saw him playing football was the game against the Saints, in which he was the best receiver on the planet in week 16 last year. And people don't like him. People don't like the swag. I think people have different reasons for that. We can talk about that offline.
This is the real show we want to do. This is where we take the off ramp to the real show. Probably there's a lot more people out there than we realize want to hear. But for now, we won't.
Yeah. So I'm not going to go there. But, let's put it this way. The reason it's such a popular click and the reason why all the news articles, the news sites keep writing the same story over and over. Can you believe it? He did it again with the helmet. Can you believe this? Because they know the certain kind of person likes to click on it and then write in the comments and get mad. And I just don't think that stuff influences football. I think he's such a transcendent player at every other thing other than, I guess, like acting like a grown-up, that I am super pro Antonio Brown. Given where he's going, I'm super pro.
Yeah, and look, I can't argue with your bottom line direction here, which is when a player shows, I'll do a sorry Joe, when a player shows he's a total badass, until we watch him and he doesn't look like a total badass, just keep taking him. Mm-hmm. Just keep taking him. Like, and Randy Moss has come up, and look, when you watch Randy Moss with Oakland, he was quitting. He just was quitting on the team. I remember that preseason was really weird because Belichick gave his little like corner smile, and they was like, "Yeah, Randy Moss isn't going to play during the preseason." But the point of being like, if you're like, "Hey, Randy Moss is a badass," I'm just going to take him and see what happens. Yeah, that's fair. And I've said I'm anti Antonio Brown, not because I'm a Steelers honk, Western PA born and bred, but because I don't know how much of his value was from the connection between him and Roethlisberger. And I'm not sure how much of that Carr can keep alive. But what Carr can do is realize, like, I just have to go 1, 2, and throw it somewhere around Antonio Brown, and it's going to be a completion. And if
so, go ahead. So I did a YouTube show on Antonio Brown just as the helmet stuff was breaking, and all I wanted to show. I mean, nobody's arguing that Antonio Brown's not good. There's not too much of that going around. But all I wanted to show on that video was what happens when you cover Antonio Brown one-on-one.
Right.
What happens when you don't have a safety? In the NFL right now, what double coverage means is not 2 guys running with Antonio Brown. It means a safety or even a linebacker sort of cutting off an inside, like a crossing route, shallow cross. And when the Steelers would see a safety not respecting Antonio Brown's side of the field, it was automatic. Yeah, I could show you 100 plays where you simply can't have the safety over the top on every single play. And when Roethlisberger would see it, sometimes he'd give the little dummy, turn his head, and then turn back to Antonio Brown, and the safety just jumps, and then it's done. It's done. He doesn't lose one-on-one. He's incredible. Yeah,
that's why he's a Hall of Famer. And I was going to be really excited to go to Canton the weekend that he was inducted, but now, but hey, I don't want to. Again, we're veering off into the Stephen A. Skip territory. Yeah. Josh Gordon's back. Now, it's a bit of a stampede up the board to make sure you get him. One of the concepts, Chris, that I'm toying with in my head, and I know there's smart people out there and there's technology to capture this, is that ADP doesn't really capture the range of where the player may be picked. So some players, their ADP, they may be always picked within 10 picks above and below. We're all pretty much in the same range on a player. Some players, the most optimistic player in a typical 12 or 10 person league is going to be 2 or 3 rounds higher. So you have to be aware of that and be more willing to reach for that player. I think Josh Gordon's going to be that kind of guy because he's Josh Gordon. So even if ADP levels off in 7th round, you still probably have to take him in the 4th or 5th round if you want him. And maybe, who knows, if he shows up and everyone's like, he's looking great. Because I don't know if you saw, I'm bringing this up again because people are still asking me, how long is his suspension going to be? Ben Valin, and Ben might not be correct, reported that Goodell's giving him credit for time served, which is just crazy. And everyone says, like, oh, this is the CBA coming up. And it might be, you know. But anyway, Josh Gordon, are you going to try to stampede to the front of the line for him?
Not at that price. Not at that stampede price that you just mentioned. That seems too rich for my blood. Coincidentally, another player that I just did a video on, I think Saturday morning, the day after the news dump. Didn't you love when that came out?
Yeah.
Friday afternoon, everybody's literally in their car
on an airplane. Dude. I was actually on an airplane, which Pat Doherty from Roto World said am I ever going to take a flight where Josh Gordon doesn't get suspended or reinstated anyway?
That's awesome. So here's why I wouldn't be rushing up the board up to the 4th round like you're talking about, even though you absolutely might be right about that just you get all you need is one person in your league to be really excited and picture 2013 again and boom, forget it. Having gone back and rewatched all that Patriots film, you know who he looked like last year? Alshon Jeffrey. Slow.
But remember, he had that hamstring. He had that hamstring that may not have been right all year. I mean, maybe.
It's possible, but he couldn't really square off routes.
Yeah.
He basically, the first month of the season, he ran nothing but posts. And you know, like I have him in my like number 23 or number 24 among receivers. So I'm not trying to say don't draft Josh Gordon. I'm more reacting to the idea that you're going to really reach for him. And I think the person who really reaches for him is the one who has visions of like the little screen pass that he would catch from whoever in Cleveland that he would catch it from, what motley array of quarterbacks that was, and then take it 80 yards to the house. And that certainly was not in evidence last year. Now I don't know if you heard this, Sig. He trained with Tim Montgomery this summer. So that by definition means he's like probably the fastest human now.
Yeah.
But I'm going to say I'm not considering that part of it. Yeah, to me, he is a big possession receiver now who can still score touchdowns and still has really good ball skills. By the end of last year, he started to really be on the same page with Brady, with like the back shoulder, not the fade so much, but just sort of like the go route where it's underthrown and he turns around and goes and gets it. Has some really nice body positioning. There's tons to recommend Josh Gordon. The thing that I don't think he has, at least he didn't show last year, and maybe it was about a hamstring, but boy, I saw it from the very beginning to the very end, and it's possible every single snap was related to the hamstring, but it didn't look like he had that kind of speed anymore. And that's what makes me think of Alshon, because he's sort of Alshon sized and sort of Alshon physical, and really with a good set of hands and a good nose for the end zone, and like all the stuff we like about Alshon. It feels to me that's kind of what Gordon might be right now.
And N'Keal Harry. A lot of overlap in those games too. Yeah. People brought that up whenever they took Harry. Anyway, and I have to pause with Gordon simply because when Rob Gronkowski was out last year, he got a ton of targets and he produced like it's a tiny sample, 3 games, but you know, he's a 1,600 yard receiver if you project out those 3 games. At the same time, he may not even play this year for all we know. I mean, this is still in its nascent stages. So again, another one of these players, you're taking a stand, even if you say, I'm probably not going to take him. That's still a stand. He's a tough one. There's so many receivers to like in the 4th or 5th round. It's hard to put Gordon ahead of them, but somebody probably is going to. AJ Green. This is another one that, again, like there's no way to get out of it. You should go into your draft having some idea what you think about AJ Green. What do you think, Chris?
I have him almost in exactly the same neighborhood as Gordon.
Right.
So it's going to be the same kind of thing where the enthusiast is probably going to be ahead of me on him, and I'm not going to get him. But if there isn't an enthusiast in my league, you know, I get down to, I guess the value would be 6th round. I guess if you said late 5th, it wouldn't make me cry. But
right.
I would prefer 6th round because, I mean, that should be flex. And if you're telling me I got the risk of AJ Green as a flex and the reward of potentially, you know, the dude who until this happened with the ankle, I still had as a top 10 wide receiver, maybe number 10 as a wide receiver, then it starts to feel like a risk worth taking. But my goodness. I mean, everything you just said about Josh Gordon not playing is 100% true of AJ Green as well.
Yeah.
How long did we go through the toe last year where he was coming back that week and then, oh no, he wasn't, and then he was, and oh no, he wasn't, and then he was, and then he played one down and didn't even get touched and went down and needed surgery on the toe. So this isn't the toe, this is an ankle. He's already had the surgery, but it seems like I'm probably not going to be taking him in the 4th round.
Yeah, it's funny, Chris. You're making me think of is that I never have a chance to write all the stuff I want to write. Not even close. I probably only write like 20% of what I want to write in any given August. August is the best time to do what we do because you can really kind of go off on flights of fancy to express what it is that is slanting through your head as you're thinking about this all day, right?
Well, you've seen my almanac. I do that in the middle of the summer.
Yeah,
it's like 240 pages or whatever.
It's fun. And one of the articles I'm thinking about writing that I may or may not have time to do is just see what happens if I put together a draft board with 3 very simple rules to see what it spits out, And the rules are take a players on the upside of their career arc. So, players in, let's say, their first 4 or 5 years in the league.
Mm-hmm.
Take players in good offenses. So, we might make a list of like 12 or 16 top half of the league offenses, let's say, and take players who aren't hurt right now. So we eliminate guys like Keenan Allen and Amari Cooper. We eliminate the guys who've already broken the injury seal as of now. I mean, we could argue whether Damian Williams and players like that, Kiki Cutie, my guy, even, just don't overthink it and see what that spits out. And certainly AJ Green's one of those players that, like, you mentioned it very well. You drew the picture well when you said, like, if we go back to our last year, or even I think it happened with an ankle 2 or 3 or 4 years ago, also with him, where we're just waiting. We're just in this holding pattern. And you're also relying on Cincinnati as an organization. And that's
almost like that's like waiting on a Washington football team,
right,
doctor, to get something right. Yeah,
right. It's like there's a waiting for Godot fantasy football take here. Like, people, I've been really excited to get Kerryon Johnson in the 3rd round just because he's in that badass category to me. Like, I've seen enough to know that he's a badass. But then there's Matt Patricia standing there with his hands on his hips, like blocking it because it requires some sort of effective management. And I agree, like, if you're relying on Matt Patricia, anything that Matt Patricia runs to go well,
I think he's all right, to be honest. I think I like your Kerryon take because I think I'm okay with Patricia.
Yeah, well, and I mean, it might be so that his simple-mindedness still circles all the way back around to help us if they get 450 carries, I mean, so we'll see. Anyway, this is on the couch. I'm psychoanalyzing coaches, but I really want to not psychoanalyze you, although we do that kind of, we read between the lines and do it, Sometimes a first down marker is just a first down marker. But let's step through, because I'm having everybody on, and we won't get a chance to talk again until later on this season, probably after the season starts, Chris. It's just some basic overview, okay?
Mm-hmm.
Let's start with quarterback. Just, give me some names. Give me basic approach to quarterback in drafts this year.
All right, well, so 12 teams. We're waiting. We're waiting forever. We're waiting until we can wait no longer. The only one that I'm finding that if I don't wait, whose average draft position I like, is still Russell Wilson.
Yes.
He's a flag player for me. I do the 10 flag players every year, and he's the only quarterback on the list. I don't feel as though I have to reach to get him. I just naturally get him usually after where I have him rated.
Yeah.
Because it's crazy to me that I mentioned off the top that Kyler Murray is going ahead of Russell Wilson, when the best that Kyler Murray is going to be is maybe someday he could be like Russell Wilson, except for he needs to learn to not look at pass rushers when they're running at him, because that's a pretty big weakness of his right now.
Yeah.
So Wilson would be the only one, and otherwise I don't, there's so many that in most leagues it doesn't really matter. Wait till the 10th round and take whoever, Phillip Rivers, Tom Brady. I don't care. And if you want to, if yours is a league where there's going to be 15 unowned quarterbacks or 13 unowned quarterbacks or whatever, and you want to do Josh Allen and then stream him with 3 other guys, I'm okay with that too. But just don't be taking the early guys. And
I want to call some attention to Wilson, as you pointed out. I actually think that tier from like 5 to 10, quarterback 5 to 10, can be fertile. Guys like Carson Wentz and Cam Newton, Baker Mayfield sometimes is there, Matt Ryan sometimes, in that they can be not as good as Mahomes, but still give you a decisive advantage over the pack. But Wilson is the one who's the cheapest.
Yeah,
and
that's the one. That's why.
Yeah, and he's the cheapest. And the early season schedule is beautiful for fantasy production. They open with Cincinnati. I don't remember exact order, but I know that the Rams, the Cardinals, the Steelers, the Browns. I mean, these are all games that sound like high-scoring games to me. Because the Seattle defense is going to be poor. They're not going to have a pass rush. Maybe Ziggy Ansah, maybe if he's ready to play. You know, their pass rush is going to be just horrendous to open the season, non-existent. So I'm excited to have Russell Wilson and Tyler Lockett, for that matter, on my team to help my team get off to a hot start. Who are some of the names later? Well, you mentioned Tom Brady, and that's another important thing to point out is Josh Gordon coming back makes quarterback even deeper because now Tom Brady looks more attractive. You mentioned Brady, you mentioned Rivers, you mentioned Josh Allen. Is there anybody as you wait that is your favorite out of that group?
It would probably be Brady. I would have rated Brady as a top 10 fantasy quarterback even without Gordon coming back, to be honest. I just think he has almost always done it with trash at wide, even when he's had trash at wide receiver, even when Gronk has been hurt. Yeah. I'm fairly certain he was the MVP of the league 2 years ago. I'm pretty certain he was a top 3 quarterback on everybody's board last season. I don't, if someone wants to make the argument, listen, he's too old now, and I just don't believe that I need to take that risk to go into a season with a dude who's playing at such an advanced age. I guess I can't slam that take too much. The take that says they're too run focused, this is the same take that gets Russell Wilson his draft position. I just don't think there's such a thing as too run focused anymore in the NFL. 50, granted, great. Okay. Yes. I would love to have a quarterback who throws it 80% of the time, but if 50% of the time is the floor and you're good, I'm good. That's all I need. And I'm pretty sure Tom Brady's good. So, feels to me like Brady is, I don't really look at ADP at all until basically last week. This time last week is the first time I really look at ADP, and because I really want my ranks to be my own ranks. And one of the things, although people had already told me because they get the almanac and they're like, "You're an idiot on Tom Brady." Yeah. But one of the things that I definitely recognize is that I wear the Patriots footy pajamas, but I'm definitely not pro Patriot generally in my fantasy takes. I sort of agnostic about the Patriots in my fantasy takes. And I think last year, as opposed to the MVP year 2 years ago, he bumped up to like 11 interceptions, which hurt. But having gone back and watched the film on those, it was like 6 of them were either tipped or literally dropped by his receiver. And then, touchdowns just come and go. He had a fair number of touchdowns. I grant you that, if you want to play the Josh Allen game, if you want to play the Lamar Jackson game, the Mitch Trubisky game, the running quarterback game, you're giving yourself probably more weekly ceiling, but the floor is that they're disasters and they turn into Jameis Winston. And, if it's a league where there's any quarterback scarcity at all, you could really back yourself in a corner.
Absolutely. And that's why I like to look at schedule too. And I bring this up a lot, but I feel like it can't be hammered enough that Lamar Jackson opens with Miami, Arizona, and Kansas City. So I'm feeling like the ceiling is more in play than the floor for those weeks, but maybe not for other weeks. Allen starts with the Jets, so that's good, probably. But then it could get rocky from there. Trubisky starts with the Packers, and Trubisky, it's not been as bad as Jimmy Garoppolo, but there's been enough murmurs like, no, we expected him to look better than he has looked. Anyway, okay, running back. You mentioned Todd Gurley. Give me another name or two that's a foundation running back on your teams.
Who else have I gotten a lot? I mean, I like to get Le'Veon Bell in the first round, like later in the first round if I can. I just think all of the concerns that people will manifest about Bell kind of presuppose that he's any other running back going to a new team, going to an offense that maybe isn't as good, all that stuff. And what I'm saying is, okay, but the last time I saw Le'Veon Bell, he was the best running back on the planet. And maybe that's, and actually another argument you go is, I just don't want that risk because he had a whole year off. And I get that. That would be a fine argument for me too. I'm not that into the argument that says, oh, Sam Darnold isn't a good enough player to sustain a good running back, or that team is somehow, or Adam Gase is somehow, I mean, if we want to say Adam Gase has a history of abusing running backs, I just point to Miami and I say, who was the really great running back that he had that he abused? Like, I guess, Jay Ajayi for 10 minutes, but I don't feel like we can look at Kenyon Drake anymore and go, Adam Gase
Right.
Damn
What were you
you.
doing? Yeah.
Yeah. So I will wind up with Le'Veon. Boy, if I have the one pick, I sure don't mind getting Saquon Barkley.
Yeah.
He's pretty good at football.
Well, and actually, there's a little bit of comfort in seeing Daniel Jones look competent in the preseason, and the idea of having Saquon Barkley next to Daniel Jones doesn't seem as well. Maybe, who knows? It may be more comforting than the Saquon Barkley with Eli Manning once we see Eli Manning.
All I can say about that is that whatever the situation is that we're going to get concerned about with Barkley, it's not going to be like worse than last year. It's going to be the same as last year. Like he's a phenomenal player.
Probably.
Someone else I'd say.
The situation. The only thing I'll point on the situation is Beckham. They had Beckham for 2/3 of the season.
It's true. It's true, but they invested more heavily in the offensive line, so maybe that works out.
Balances that out. Yeah.
I feel I was sort of being tongue in cheek that's my real foundational piece. I'm really an innovator with Saquon Barkley.
Yeah. No. Hey, I mean, still, when you draw, I mean, like a month ago, the number 2 pick was a little more difficult, but now with this stuff with Zeke, it sorts it out a little bit. And then Sean Payton saying that, hey, we're going to stick with Alvin Kamara's workload last year from when Ingram was around, makes him a little less attractive as number 1 or number 2, if you believe what Sean Payton is saying. And I mean, he did have a point when he said that worked out pretty well for us. So, why should we mess with that? Latavius Murray's pretty solid. Speaking of Latavius Murray or other running backs going in the second halves of drafts, is there a name or two that you commonly find on your roster when you're filling out your bench at running back?
Speaking of which, I don't think Latavius Murray's going in the second half of drafts anymore, is he?
Well, 8th, 9th round. So you're right. Depends on how late the draft is. I mean, it's a 16-round draft, whatever. But yeah, you're right. Absolutely. He's in the middle of drafts.
I mean, I see him in the 6th on Fantasy Football Calculator right now, that's where I go, woo, I don't think I want any piece of Latavius Murray at that price.
No, thank you.
Yeah. And it's not really even a handcuff situation anymore because, I just don't think Latavius Murray nearly as good a player as Mark Ingram. A good player, fine. And I've actually been pro Latavius Murray 2 years in a row before this season. But now if you're going to take him in the 6th round, I mean, he was going in the 13th last year. I was like, let's get him. But okay. Anyway, that's not really your question. I will get Dion Lewis a fair amount. I will get Nyheim Hines a fair amount. These are the opposite of what you talked about earlier in the show, where in the second half of drafts, you like to shoot the moon. Those two guys aren't moon shooters. Those guys are much more, what's my best case? My best case is you're sneaking in like a high value ADP kind of maybe like PPR flex, right? I'm probably not drafting either of those two guys to take over the job, but probably they correspond with what we talked about earlier with the 49ers backfield, that I don't mind Marlon Mack's ADP. It's okay, but I don't think he's a full-time back. There aren't any full-time backs anymore. There are 4 of them. Like, I'm not worried about the fact that Marlon Mack's not a full-time back. I just think Nyheim Hines can be Tariq Cohen so easily. And it's so weird that a dude who is a world-class sprinter didn't make a single play from scrimmage last year over 28 yards. He either has the worst vision in the world. Like, his vision is like me without the glasses. Like, that's his vision on the field, I guess. Or else it was just unlucky. I think you're going to see I don't think you need to see more touches for Nyheim Hines to be a lot more useful for fantasy, because I think he's just going to make big plays in a way that Tariq Cohen makes big plays. He may not be as laterally quick as Tariq Cohen, but he is freaking fast.
Yeah.
And then Dion Lewis, I just sort of have doubts about Derrick Henry. I think we're assuming a lot to say that the Titans look at December and just go, we're remaking our offense. Derrick Henry's totally worth of all of our trust. It's not even that the market's so high on Derrick Henry. The market's done a good job, like sort of being restrained on Derrick Henry, to be honest. I was worried he'd be a 1st-round pick after December. Like, we get a little Alex Collins mojo and be like, oh, he's phenomenal. He's great, right? And it seems like people have kind of taken this with a grain of salt, but they're ignoring Dion Lewis. And I think he's a good player who won't be anybody's lead back, but who, if the Titans turn it out to be, I mean, every year, 5, 6, 7 offenses completely surprise us and are good when everybody's decided beforehand they're terrible. The Titans, I don't think, are one of them, but if they are, because the NFL's weird, then Dion Lewis would eat. I think he would benefit.
Yeah, well, it'll be interesting to watch. I think the Titans play the Browns week 1. Can you tell I've been looking at the early schedule a lot?
I can tell.
Well, this is at the time of the year that I start picturing how these early games are going to go. Right. And with Marcus Mariota, the Browns defensive line is going to test him. I mean, Myles Garrett and Olivier Vernon and Sheldon Richardson, Larry Ogunjobi. We'll see how decisive he is. We'll see what Arthur Smith, the new offensive coordinator, has up his sleeve. Wide receiver. It can be anywhere you want in the draft, because the reality is you can be really excited about taking Juju or Evans in the second round. You can be really excited about 4th, 5th round guys. You can be excited about guys late in your draft. Who are you excited about at wide receiver?
I think the first one is Diggs, Stephon Diggs. I love Adam Thielen too, but Adam Thielen goes around earlier. And so I if I take Thielen, if I get to a point where I'm like, yeah, I want Thielen, especially in a PPR league, I have him a notch or two ahead of Stephon Diggs. Then I'm not going to take Diggs in the next round. But if Thielen passes me by, it just seems like I get Diggs more often. Stephon Diggs is a route runner. So a video that we have coming out the day we're recording this on Tuesday, the 20th of August, is top 5 route runners in the league. And Stephon Diggs is number 2 on that list. He's crazy. He's so incredibly explosive out of breaks. And Adam Thielen's a really good route runner too. So it almost feels like you have to it's like a prison gang riot and you have to pick a side between Thielen and Diggs. And I don't want to have to pick. I think they're both really good and very much worth your time, but I like Diggs in standard a little bit more, and definitely at his draft value, I like him more. I can tell you other names, but do you want to, I can see you, I know you're hate Stephon Diggs, with the heat of 1,000 suns.
I don't hate Stephon Diggs. I just know that I'm taking Tyler Lockett in that round. So, this is where I'm at as the evolution of, and I want to say to people this year, one of my overall keynotes this year, Chris, has been, there's really no wrong way to approach your draft, because at every level, in every position, there are players that we can look back and say, these players were the right answers. And the more important thing, even though player evaluation and evaluation of teams is a little squirrelier than coming up with some ways to game the system with, trying to take different parts, tackle positions at different parts of your draft where the ground is more fertile. I'm not sure that this year fits in that as much as just go out and get your guys. I know that's really simplistic. And I'm figuring out who my guys are now, really. And I would love to have, and this is where auction is superior, right? Because I would love to have, if I could have a draft plan where instead of a 1st and 2nd round pick, I got 3 3rd round picks and 3 4th round picks, and I just gave up my 1st round pick to do that. And maybe I gave up my 5th round pick too, but I just could target players in that 25 to 40 section of the draft. There's so much upside there that I don't recall there being in years past. Anyway, that's just where I'm at on Diggs and Minnesota. I'm probably underestimating a little bit how the whole Dennison, Kubiak offense and the additions on the offensive line will make it a better offense than the one we saw the last 3 weeks of the year with Kevin Stefanski, when it was just boring. It was just a boring offense. It was like Matt Patricia was coaching them instead of Mike Zimmer, defensive head coaches. Anyway, a few other wide receiver, got about 8 minutes left. A few other wide receiver names that you like.
So like Keenan Allen, I think I like the injury news being sort of throwing a little bit of a wet blanket on his stock. I don't know whether it's a serious injury. I tend to think it's not, but I don't really have any way of knowing that. Maybe it's just me liking the player. I will wind up with some Donte Pettis. I just got him in that CBS draft I just mentioned. Again, sometimes it does seem like I wind up liking these guys just because there becomes a negative narrative about them. And I feel like I can counter program against what I know the market's going to do. I really don't find any other receiver on that team to be at all appealing skills wise. Deebo Samuel maybe someday, but not yet. And Donte Pettis came into the league knowing how to run routes. So he's certainly going to wind up on teams of mine. I'll wind up with Cooper Kupp a fair amount. I wouldn't say that I love Cooper Kupp. I think I'm clearly making that statement partly on him being a pretty good player and me thinking the situation is probably one of those bulletproof situations. But it strikes me seeing him go significantly after Robert Woods is a potential inefficiency that I like. Not that I don't like Robert Woods. I like him fine. I have them rated right near each other. Just one's cheaper. Kupp is a great matchup weapon. He's a great tool that they use all the time to try to get him matched on linebackers or slow slot corners they know they can take advantage of. He's not himself all that fast, but honestly, the kinds of routes he runs, he doesn't profile like this player, but the kinds of routes he runs is sort of Julian Edelman-esque. He runs a ton of option routes and he's open. He comes out of breaks really quick. So I definitely wind up with him a bunch too.
Yeah, I'll second that if you're going to take a Rams receiver, it should be Kupp. I was at ADP. Kupp's the one to take. Okay, tight end, same as it ever was. Chris, you can invest early. You can get an aspirational guy in the mid rounds who might become a top guy. You can get an aspirational guy in the late rounds who should become serviceable. Although last year we saw George Kittle go all the way from serviceable to elite? What's your angle at tight end this year?
I almost treat it like quarterback. That position is going away. I think we might get to the point in the NFL where we might not have tight end as its own position. In fantasy, at some point, we might wind up with like tight ends just get folding into pass catchers because there's the fewest number of snaps ever taken by tight ends last year, more 3 receiver sets ever than has existed in the NFL. And it's the interesting conversation is like, okay, what if Kelsey was only wide receiver eligible? Now where does he go? That
Right.
he's good, but he's probably not quite as in demand because he doesn't have that scarcity. But so I'm probably not paying for one of the elites. It feels like I get a lot of David Njoku, but I do it really, really late. I don't ever feel like I pay for him. It just maybe I consider OJ Howard, Evan Engram, David Njoku to be of a piece. Not exactly the same. I would order them, in that order. But it seems to me that in his shorter time, Howard has proven that he's more of a football player than the other two have. Engram had a hard time staying healthy last year, but hasn't really shown that he's completely manifested the athletic ability. And I would argue the same of Njoku. And I don't really buy the too many mouths to feed argument because I want that team to be a wagon. If that team's a wagon, everybody's fine. If the Browns are a wagon, then great. If they're not, then I'll go get another tight end. I'm cool.
Yeah.
So I probably wind up with him more than anybody. And my overall take on it is I can't think of a draft where I got Kelsey. And there probably have been drafts where I've gotten Ertz. And then it seems like Njoku, or it seems like I'll just punt the position entirely and take Kyle Rudolph for 606. And then realizing that I might get tired of it and hitch my wagon to somebody who's higher upside who doesn't get drafted.
Absolutely, Njoku. It's interesting because those guys all came into the league together, right? They were all first-round picks in the same draft. Howard and Engram and Njoku.
Howard? Oh, I thought Howard was a year later. Oh, okay, I got that wrong.
They're all in their third year now, and Njoku actually has a higher career arc because he came in younger and is probably the most athletic of the three, even though they're all very athletic. So
and fast, yeah. OJ Howard might be the fastest, but they're all really fast. They profile similarly, honestly.
Yeah. And speaking of everybody having different strengths, but all profiling is like worth your time. Thank you, Chris, for being the third guest in the cavalcade, the parade of all-stars. I'm lucky that these people like to spend time with me and spend time with us talking about fantasy football. It's all on our mind. Thank you, everybody, showing up for the live show. Thank you, everybody, listening. And you can follow Chris at Harris Football. And you're still doing the show every day, right?
I do 5 podcasts a week. I think I have about 88 of them left for the end of the year. Is that a lot?
Yeah.
I can't tell.
You're one, and I'm not sure if Mike and Bobby over at Fantasy Pros are pumping it out, because I think Cecil and I do 8 episodes a week of the Audible, so it's good because it's like our daily workout. And I like that people give us excuses, so keep giving Chris Harris excuses at Harris Football to do the great work that he does. We'd like to do great work for all of you all out there so very much because you're so classy. And we'll be back on the cavalcade of stars on the couch this week. Don't say anything you don't want anyone to hear because it's still